You know, one of the things that I have made a mistake about in the past that I just realized in the last couple of weeks was that, you know, people often accuse me and they say, well, most of the people that listen to you are men. And I think, you know, when you're accused like that, your automatic response is, well, you wouldn't be accused if you weren't doing something wrong. So there must be something wrong about that. It's like, why isn't it 50% women? And so I've said things like, well, you know, 80% of the people who watch YouTube videos are men. And so the fact that 80% of the people who watch my videos are men, isn't that surprising given that base rate? Then why is that all of a sudden supposed to be a bad thing? I'm asking men to, you know, to be more honest, and especially in their speech and their thinking, and to be more responsible for themselves and for their family and for their community, and to grow up and to shoulder their burden and to live a responsible and meaningful life. There's something wrong. And I thought, well, why am I even playing into this? It's like, fine, I'm talking to men. I'm encouraging them. Well, I'll tell you a couple of strange things that I don't really understand. The first is, when we've done the analysis of the effects of the Future Authoring Program, it has had a differential impact on men, and it's had a particularly differential impact on excluded men. And so that would be non-Western ethnic minority men, majority men who aren't doing very well. So for example, at Mohawk College, the Future Authoring Program had a particularly robust effect on Mohawk College students who were men who hadn't done very well in high school and who hadn't picked a major that had a career destination at its end. So you can imagine those people they have an ambiguous relationship with the idea of education, and they're not oriented specifically towards a goal. They're not very motivated. Now, why did it have a differential effect on men? That's a good question. Well, first of all, the women are doing better. So it might just be a matter of the fact that it does better for people who aren't doing as well, and at the moment, most of them are men. I think that might be part of it, but I don't believe that's all of it.
If you're an extraordinarily compassionate person, let's say 98 percentile will say, you're going to be sacrificing yourself to other people all the time, and there are people who will find that extraordinarily endearing, and it will be under some circumstances, but the problem is that you will sacrifice yourself. And so, you will get taken advantage of continually by people who are looking for someone like you until you grow some teeth, and you'll think, no, that's the opposite of compassion. Being able to bite hard is the opposite of compassion, which it is. And so you'll have that pushed into the predator category. I'm not doing that, I'm not getting angry, I don't like conflict. It's like until you bring that out of the depths and put it on so you can use it, you're going to be in trouble. And that's kind of Nietzsche's idea of the evaluation of good and evil. Right? You have a sense of what's good in a sense of what isn't with your conscience, but it's not very smart. It's got things in the wrong boxes, and a lot of the things that even nature itself, a lot of the things that you accept as untrammeled goods like compassion, let's say, have a very dark side first of all. And second, are not enough to get you through life, you need the opposite virtues too. And so you have to develop them.
One of the things that's quite characteristic about people, especially if they're introverted and they don't have very many friends, they don't have people to talk to, if they're suffering, maybe they're depressed or anxious, or they have some sets of strange symptoms like agoraphobia or obsessive compulsive disorder, one of the things they always presume is that the fact that they're suffering in that manner means that there's something, not only something wrong with them, but something uniquely wrong with them, so that it's their fault and no one else is like them. And one of the things you do is point out to them is like, yeah, depression and anxiety doesn't really require any explanation, right? There's plenty of reason. I don't remember who said it. Everyone has sufficient justification for suicide. I think that was the claim. Well, but the point is that if you look through the experiences of the typical person, unless they're very, very fortunate, and they won't be that way forever, that's certainly the case, that they can point to traumatic experiences in their life, death and loss and illness and humiliation and all those sorts of things, that are sufficient to account for existence in a state of quasi-permanent negative emotion. All the really agreeable people are women. All the really disagreeable people are men. And maybe the real differences occur at the extremes, right? So, and it's a very interesting side effect of overlapping distribution. People can be mostly the same, but that can still produce radical differences. Disagreeable men won't do anything they don't want to do. They just say, up yours. I'll go home and play video games. And I'm not listening to your stupid classes. And why should I work for you? I'll just go have fun. I'll do my own thing. I don't think they're motivated. And so then if you take the men who are like write that and you say, okay, what do you want? You can have what you want, but you have to figure out what it is. So then they write down what they want and they think, oh, hey, well, that might be worth having, so maybe I'll put some effort into it. That's what it looks like to me. Now, that's weak evidence, and this is a weak argument, but I'm trying to stretch out my understanding to account.
The persona, you could say, is a good way of thinking about it. You watch all those rom-coms where there's always kind of a beta male guy who's being real friendly and always failing miserably with women because basically he's lying to himself and to them. He's a persona, and a persona is the face that you show to the world when you're trying to pretend and to convince yourself and others that you're, I would say, harmless, but we could say a good person, but a good person isn't harmless. A good person is capable of, well, maybe a good person is capable of anything, but is willing to hold that in abeyance. Persona means is the mask that you wear to convince yourself and the world that you're not a terrible monster, so that when you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't have to run away screaming.
Men who are popular have absolutely no motivation whatsoever to form a genuine relationship with any single woman. And so it doesn't work for the women because they don't get to have a relationship. They get to have a series of casual affairs with high-demand men. It doesn't work for the majority of men because they don't have any relationships at all, and it turns the high-demand men, I think, into psychopaths. I mean, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I don't believe that you can separate sexual intimacy from emotion. I don't think you can separate it from the rest of life, from emotional intimacy and the necessity for considering someone in their totality as a person. You don't get that with a series of one-night stands. And there's no way that you can reduce sex, if you have access to a lot of it, to mere casual pleasure repeatedly without denigrating what it means to be a human being in terms of the women that you're sleeping with, but also with regards to yourself. You don't admire people who don't take care of themselves. Like, unless there's something wrong with you, you at least want an admirable person to be accountable for themselves. And then if they've got something left over so they can be accountable for their family, well, then that's a net plus, obviously. That's someone you think is solid. And then maybe they take care of some more people. They have a business or they're involved in the community in some positive way. You see, well, that's a person whose pattern of being is worth imitating. And that's all associated with responsibility. And it's so interesting because it's as if everybody kind of knows this, but that it hasn't crystallized. It's like, well, you should be responsible because that's what a good citizen is. It's not, no, you should be responsible because you need to have a deep meaning in your life to offset the suffering so you don't get bitter. And the way you do that is to bear a heavy load, to get yourself in check. For some reason, 80% of the people who showed up to this are men. Now, everybody thought I was kind of cracked to do that, and it was a risk, but I thought, no, there's something going on here. And then what's interesting now is that every public appearance that I've made that's related to the sort of topics that we're discussing is overwhelmingly men. It's like 85 to 90%. And so I thought, wow, that's weird. Like, what the hell's going on here exactly? And then the other thing I've noticed is that I've been talking a lot to the crowds that I've been talking to, not about rights, but about responsibility, right? What are you doing? You can't have the conversation about rights without the conversation about responsibility, because your rights are my responsibility. That's what they are, technically. So you just can't have only half of that discussion, and we're only having half that discussion. And the question is, well, what the hell are you leaving out if you only have that half of the discussion? And the answer is, well, you're leaving out responsibility. And then the question is, well, what are you leaving out if you're leaving out responsibility? And the answer might be, well, maybe you're leaving out the meaning of life. That's what it looks like to me. It's like, here you are, suffering away. What makes it worthwhile? Rights? It's almost impossible to describe how bad an idea that is. Responsibility. That's what gives life meaning.
If somebody can walk away from your life, let them walk away. You shouldn't have to convince anybody to love you. If they can walk, let them go. If they leave you, it means they're not attached to your future. Some of you are taking too much time trying to convince people to love you.
You have to think about this over the decades and not over the weeks and the months, or even sometimes the years, that it's important for you to adopt the responsibility to maintain this long-term relationship, because all things considered, it's better for everyone. It gives you the narrative of your life. It provides you with a companion who knows who you are. It helps you maintain your sanity because you have someone to contend to. It provides a stable environment for the raising of children. It's like the minimal necessary
structure, social structure, that other complex social structures can be built upon too. But you need this society in there to say, stay together. It's an accomplishment. It's not just a responsibility and a necessity and a love affair. It's also an accomplishment. It's something you should be celebrated for. If you don't get your act together and you let yourself slide, then what kind of moves in to take the place of what you could have been is something that's really not good at all. So it's not only that if you're living like a dissolute life, that you're not aiming at anything positive, and so you don't have any real meaning, and you're subsumed by anxiety and all of that, and hopelessness, but something kind of hellish moves in there too to occupy that place, and so then you end up making things worse.